You're listening to Grown and Growing with Sonia Hamlin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Grown and Growing podcast. Happy New Year. If you're listening to this podcast, that means you made it to 2023, which is a blessing unto itself. And no matter how you got here, you're here, which is another opportunity for you to keep growing and keep going. Another opportunity to, live the life that you are proud of and that you want to live. Normally around this time, I would be focused on setting up my goals for the year. I was definitely a person who believed in New Year's resolutions, turning over a new leaf, focusing on what I wanted to achieve for the year, and being really intentional and deliberate about writing those things down. And not just writing them down, but having hard metrics to align with those goals. So I knew that I was hitting those goals if I hit this number or not. I really was raised on, and at least in my professional life, to make very SMART goals where SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So I use that framework to set up my goals for the year for my personal life. It was almost ritualistic for me. I would sit down with my notebook, write down my goals, how I was going to achieve them, and then at the end of the year, and maybe even before the end of the year, I would periodically check, okay, am I reaching these goals? Where have I fallen off? Do I need to change my goals and maybe because I knocked them out of the park or because I haven't even worked on them at all? I was very deliberate about doing that. And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I feel like it set some structure to my life. It gave me something to focus on. I do like achieving things. So it was very fulfilling to me to go back and check off boxes to see, what I've done. But this year, it was totally different. In 2022, it was different. I didn't have that same need to go off and make a page full of goals for myself. I probably would have forced myself to do it, but I couldn't really get into it. The thought of it made me anxious, and I really didn't want to think about it. And so that was very unlike me. But, at the time, I was going through coaching, and we were coming up on the end of the year and one of our last sessions together. And I knew that she was going to ask me about 2023 because we had talked about it in previous sessions. She's going to ask me about 2023. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this discussion about why I don't feel like talking about goals, why I don't want to, how it makes me feel anxious. And then we have to talk about the whole thing. And we get to the session, and to my surprise, she does ask me about 2023. But she doesn't force me to get past my mental block and write down some goals. That's not how it worked. In fact, she made me close my eyes and kind of envision the 2023 that would make me happy. And there were some other nuances and instructions, but that was the gist of it. And what I walked away from that exercise knowing was that I wanted to create a year that was focused on making memories with people I loved. I really wanted to focus on creating a life that was focused more on joy and less on achieving goals. And I felt like this for a reason. For the last 3 years, since 2020, I felt like I've been sprinting. I have been very challenged and focused at work. There have been a lot of changes at home, and a lot of that is pandemic driven, right? I work in healthcare, so 2020 was no cakewalk. Whereas people got to sit at home or be at home because we didn't know what was going on and take up new hobbies and make bread and get plants. I was not able to do that. I still went to work every day. In fact, I probably worked more and longer hours during 2020 than I ever have in my career. And that only changed slightly in 2021. In 2021, it was more intermittent. So I didn't have to work the full year on go because COVID came in waves, but those waves were really intense because we had new variants, we had a shortage of healthcare workers, there was a disbelief in the vaccine, there's a disbelief in whether COVID existed or not, which made for a very, high stress, work environment. Not for me. I mean, I work in an administrative role in healthcare. I'm not on the clinical side. I'm not pretending to be, but I worked in a role where I support those clinical teams. And a lot of times they looked to my teams to educate, motivate, and lift the spirits of these people, even though that's not my general job, but I partner with HR, we partner with different different departments around the hospital to do this. But what I found was we were trying to do all of this for our clinical colleagues, but nobody was doing it for us. And so you never really got to rest and say, okay, here we are. And then as COVID becomes more and more on the back burner, it's not, okay, you guys get a rest because you didn't really get that in 2020. It was, well, how do we get back to normal as quick as possible? How do we figure out what this new normal is as fast as possible? I was also dealing with a lot of change in my personal life. I was selling a house, which required, preparation of moving your life of 7 years, making, updates to the home and trying to get it prepared to sell for a really good price. Buying a house, moving my kids into a new school, out of the school they had known, the only school that they had known for years, into a school that was completely different than what they were used to. And it was just busy to the point where the stress of my life was really taking a toll physically. I had, during the summer of 2021, and actually before, I had noticed it a long time before, but I didn't really know what it was, but I had what was called premature ventricular contractions in my heart. So PVCs. And it's when you have an irregular heartbeat due to stress. And so I could feel my heart like skipping a beat. I would tell my husband, I'm like, my heart just skipped a beat, or skipped several beats. Like, what is that? And I finally went to the ER to kind of figure out what it was and learned that I had this. I also would get chest pains, things that when life got particularly stressful, my chest would get tight, like somebody was squeezing my heart. This was in 2021. And it got so bad that one day my sister, it was a particularly stressful day. And I'm talking to my sister and I'm telling her how stressful, life is. And I could just feel my chest getting tighter and tighter, to the point where she dropped everything. She lives in Cleveland. I live in Maryland. She dropped everything and drove to my house, to one, make sure that I was okay, and to make sure that she could help me get through this really stressful period. And I really, appreciate that about our relationship. But anyway, I say all that to say that, it was very stressful. And 2022, still stressful, but a little less. I'm happy to report that today I do not have PVCs anymore. My chest does not get tight with stress. But I do know that my body is capable of going there. I know that my body feels stress very acutely. Like I feel it in my body when I'm stressed. And I think having all of those changes just kind of, culminate and just kind of looking back, now that I'm in a more peaceful place, I feel like I was getting anxiety about looking into 2023. So I'm really happy that my coach did not try to talk me out of the way that I was feeling. And she didn't try to pressure me to get over this mental block that I was having about thinking about 2023 in the way that I traditionally had. She more so leaned into the way that I was feeling. She said, okay, that's what we're going to focus on. How do we do that, right? It's one thing to want that feeling. It's another thing to be deliberate about making that feeling happen. And so our job now was to say, what is joy? What defines joy, and how do you do it in big ways and in small ways? For example, when I thought about money, I didn't think about, oh my gosh, you need to save X amount in retirement, or you need to have X amount in your retirement account. It was more like, what does living in abundance feel like? And to be honest, when it comes to money specifically, I feel like all of the work that I've done in previous years, paying off my debt, really decreasing the number of bills that I pay every month, putting my money in systems so that it automatically goes where I want it to go, and then I just have money left to spend. I feel like doing those things earlier on in my life allows me to kind of take it easy with money and look at money differently. I've said on here at different points when we talked about retirement that I feel like I'm behind. And I still do. But again, if I'm living in abundance, what does that mean for me? And that means having what I need when I need it to take care of me and my family. That's basically what I'm focused on in the new year, because that is all I need, because I have systems put in place to do the rest. And there's no need to worry about it because I've done that work already. So my metrics for success in 2023 are going to be based on how I feel versus a number on a page. When it comes to things like weight loss, because every year, weight loss, fitness, in some way, shape, or form makes it onto my resolution list. And to be honest, it's the thing that I probably fail at the most. It's usually the thing that I'm like, well, not going to make that one. Makes the list every year for a reason, because I haven't quite figured it out. But this year, I really want to focus on, how do I feel in my body? That doesn't mean I'm looking at a specific number. I'm trying to reach a specific number. But how do I feel in my body? Do I feel strong? Do I feel energized? Can I move? Do I still work out diligently? And honestly, working out has never been my problem. I've been working out in the wee hours of the morning at 5 a.m. since 2013, since Black Girls Run was huge, and I was running with them at 5 a.m. Working out has never been my issue. It's food that's the issue. But I'll save that for another day. But so as I'm thinking about this in early December, I go to record the episode before this one, So It Shall Be, with Kia Lee, where she talked about yoga and meditation, really breaking that down for me. I had already started to think that 2023 was going to be a different year for me. But what she said in that episode really kind of put a stamp on it and was like, yes, this is what I should be doing. She put a name to how I wanted to approach 2023 instead of making New Year's resolution. She said that in 2023, I am setting intentions, not making resolutions. So she kind of put a name to it to me. And since she said that, I've kind of seen it several times, like on social media, maybe on television or interviews or other podcasts, setting intentions. And I've never really paid attention to it before. Maybe people have been talking about setting intentions forever. I'm sure they have, but I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on making resolutions and setting goals. And so now that I have a name for it, setting intentions, I had to think about, what the heck is living life intentionally? How do you define that? How do I define that for myself? Now, I know what intentions are, right? I know what they are. I set intentions before I plan each podcast episode. At the top of my notes, I write out my intention for this podcast, how I'm going into it, what I want to get out of it. So that helps me ground the content, shape my questions. And so it just helps me set the tone for the podcast that I want to put out. I set intentions before I go into large meetings at work. I really take a minute to focus on what I want to get across, how I want to articulate my words, and how I want people to walk away with the message that I'm trying to convey. And, it is always my hope that they take the message in the way that I want them to receive it. So those are very specific examples of intention, but how do you live a life with intention? And so I spent the past couple of weeks thinking about what is an intentional life, right? Versus moments of intention. How do you do that for your life? And, one of the easiest ways for me to define what a word is to see what it is not, right? Is to understand what it is not or identify what it is not. And for me, living intentionally means that you are not living in autopilot. That was the word that kind of came. It means that you are not in autopilot, that you are deliberately, intentionally engaged in your life. Now, what are some signs that you may be on autopilot? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever been in autopilot? I definitely have. There was a period of time in my life where I was definitely on autopilot. Here are some signs that you may be. Number one, you do things without thinking about it. Now, there are things in your life you can do without thinking about it because you've done it a million times. Changing a diaper, making coffee, you've done it or you've mastered it. And so it doesn't take you as much thought to do it. But the majority of activities in your life, you do them without thinking. You go through your life like it's the movie Groundhog's Day. You wake up, you get dressed, you drive to work, you do your job, you go home, you cook dinner, you watch TV, you go to sleep, rinse, repeat. Your routine is predictable. The second sign is that you say yes without thinking about it. You automatically say yes to anything that anybody asks you. So you are just busy for the sake of being busy, not because you value the activity, not because you love the activity. You have just become accustomed to saying yes. 3, you forget parts of your day. Has somebody ever asked you hey, how was your day? And you don't remember? You're like, I don't know. I guess it was fine. Or this has happened to me. I can admit it, where I've arrived in my driveway and then I'm like, how did I get to my driveway? Which way did I take? How did I get here? And it sounds weird, but it has definitely happened to me. Number 4, you spend a lot of time doing mindless things, mindless activities. The biggest one, scrolling on social media. You intend to scroll for 5 minutes and you look up and it's been 2 hours. Or I'm going to play Candy Crush for 20 minutes and you look up and it's been 3 hours. So you do things for hours or you scroll for hours without really thinking about it, with no sense of time, no sense of feeling what you're doing. And number 5, you feel like you're just existing, not living. You feel like your life is a series of routines and either deep in your bones, or you may know it easily. You may be able to easily identify that you are just existing and not living a life full of joy or whatever you want to take from your life, whatever examples or indications you have that you are living a life versus existing. You don't see those in your life right now. Like I said, I've definitely been on autopilot. I knew I wasn't in a great place, but I didn't exactly realize I was on autopilot until somebody pointed it out to me. They noticed that I was on autopilot. They said that they had seen me put myself in a little box and I would not take myself out of the box. I put myself in a box and that I had a bright light that I was dimming. Woo. It was the wake-up call that I needed. It was hard to hear. You know how you hear things and you know it's true? You know what the person is saying is true, but it still is like, wow, just kind of knocked me off my feet. I'm shook. That's kind of how I felt. But it was the beginning of me trying to figure out, how do I get outside of this box that I put myself in? How do I let more of my light shine? How do I do that? Then I started to focus on, well, how do I get out of autopilot? I didn't even ask this person, well, how do I get out of it? What do I do? Because I didn't know. I needed some guidance. So the way you get off autopilot is to live life with intention, to be intentional. And so what does that mean? The first thing for me was to be present, to be fully in the moment. When, for example, when I talk to my children, when they talk to me, right, they want to tell me about their day. I come home, I make it a point to stop what I'm doing, look them in the eye, and be curious about what they are saying. That means ask questions, get more information, have them elaborate, to let them know that I am truly interested in what they have to say. Being present also involves slowing down and noticing things. It's almost acting like you're a child. Have you ever been with a 5-year-old and they're experiencing something that you've experienced 1,000 times, and they're experiencing it for the first time and they're so excited about it and they notice things that you haven't noticed in a while, and it's like a new experience looking at it from a child's perspective. It's almost like you want to get down to being childlike. You want to make sure you're activating your senses, right? Your 5 senses, your smell, your taste, your touch, your seeing, your hearing. How do you be present in the moment, even doing what you may consider to be the most mundane things? Number 2, add some variety. One of the things that the person who told me I was on autopilot told me was, you need to add some variety to your life. You come home, you do the same thing. Maybe you take a different way home. Drive down a new street you've never taken before. Try a new recipe. Try a new exercise routine. Challenge yourself to do one new thing every day. So one of the things that I'm trying in 2023 is dipping my toe into meditation. It's something I've always felt like, oh, I can't do. My mind is too busy. I can't sit still. Ugh. But I've decided to try to give it a try this year. And I've never done it, but I've committed to doing it every Monday in January. You can join. I will leave how you can join Monday meditations in the show notes for this episode. But I've committed to doing that because I would like to be more mindful and learning how to incorporate breathing, intentional breathing into my day. So that's something I'm trying in 2023. Number 3, take some time before saying yes. This is a big one. Ask yourself, do you really want to do this? Are you really doing this because you are expected to do it? Because you don't want to let anyone down? Because you're afraid to say no? Because you've always done it? These are all terrible reasons to keep saying yes. And to be honest, I adopted this a while ago, and it actually feels good to say no. No, I'm not going because I don't want to. And let that be it. I don't have to explain. Just have to say, no, I don't want to do it, and be done. Now, sometimes you have to explain to maybe, your people you love or you're close to. But for the general population, it's mostly, no, I don't want to go, but thanks for the invitation. And really taking a beat before you say yes, getting off autopilot of saying yes will free you up in ways you could never imagine. Number 4, you need discipline. Discipline is required to be living intentionally. And while these two things may seem like they're opposites of each other, discipline, maybe that's too close to goal setting, but it's not. You have to be deliberate about being intentional. Living intentionally doesn't mean you don't have goals. It doesn't mean you can't focus on how to be better in certain things and try to attain them. This is how I feel. My intention of living life this year based on how I feel versus based on a set of metrics is the decision I've made. But you can live intentionally and still have discipline. Look, it's January. And by March, you may feel yourself being pulled back into your old ways. This is when discipline kicks in. This is when you must be deliberate about being intentional. Number 5, seek connection. Being on autopilot might mean that you have tapped out of some of your relationships. And it's not because you don't care. It's just something that happens almost without you knowing. Make it a point to really connect with the people in your lives. Engage with them. Laugh, cry, listen. This point, number 5, seeking connection, is really important to me because, when I started a podcast, I knew that it would take me more from my family than I already was. I work a full-time job. My job is not a cakewalk. It can be very difficult. There's a lot of work-life balance and there's a lot of flexibility, but the problems we're trying to solve are difficult problems. So it's not a cakewalk. Adding a podcast on top of that where I do 99% of everything, can take me away. So I am intentional about spending time with my kids, almost every night doing something that they love, which one of the things that they happen to love is playing board games. And so I make it a point to play cards with them, play Uno, play Trash, play Jenga is our new obsession. Really, it's my obsession because I suck at it and they always beat me, which they get a lot of joy out of. But seeking those connections with people you love, really being focused in on what they are saying, what you need from them, asking them about how they're doing, and really listening for the answer and being curious about the answer. To me, living with intention means living with feeling. You are feeling your life. You are feeling your feelings. Now, will all those feelings be positive? No, there are going to be negative feelings. But I'm also about feeling those feelings as well in order to get over them. And that's actually a Post-it note I have in my office. In order to get over your feelings, you have to feel them. So it's about feeling the bad and the good emotions. As I mentioned at the beginning, this year is about making memories with people I love. So I am planning time for joy. I'm literally putting it in the calendar. Big events, going to see Usher in March, or traveling to a city to see Beyonce when she released those dates, being ready, being intentional about planning my family vacations and, making time for that, for the big events, but also the little things. I mentioned playing with my kids or spending time with my husband. Sometimes we just take a drive somewhere or we go out to dinner, but making sure that I plan for those things on a monthly, daily basis. Now, I talked a lot about, being on autopilot and what that means and how some ways you can get yourself out of autopilot. But I also want to recognize that sometimes these things don't work. Sometimes you need a little more help to get you out of the rut that you're stuck in. And there's no amount of books or, talking to people, talking to your friends or your family that is going to do that for you. Sometimes you're going to need to seek, professional help from a therapist or a coach or a doctor. And that's okay. I also want you to know that that's also being intentional. Realizing that these things aren't working for me. I think I need a little bit more or a lot more in order for me to get unstuck. And so I want to make sure that I am recognizing that it may take more than 5 little steps to get you out of your rut. And, that's completely okay. So what do you have planned for this new year? Are you setting resolutions? Are you setting intentions? Or are you just going with the flow? Either way, it's all good if that is what works for you. I wish you a year full of happiness, joy, peace, and all the good things that life has to offer. Thank you all so much for rocking with me in my first year of podcasting. I celebrate a year this month, and I'm so excited about that. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you next time.